The wind had a way of howling across the plains of New Mexico, carrying with it the voices of the past, whispers of things lost and never found. On one such winter evening, Samuel Reed sat alone in his cabin, staring into the small fire that had kept him company for years. The wood popped, the wind creaked through the cabin walls, and silence settled like snow. Ever since his wife, Clara, had passed away, Samuel had grown used to the stillness. He'd learned to talk to the quiet, to find comfort in loneliness. Nights were long, and memories were the only guests that dared visit. But that evening was different. A faint knock broke through the wind. Samuel froze. For a moment, he thought his mind was playing tricks again. Then came another knock, soft but desperate. He rose slowly, lantern in hand, and opened the heavy wooden door. Two figures stood in the snow, young Apache women, shivering, barefoot, and wrapped in thin rags that the wind tore through like paper. They looked at him with eyes that carried both fear and hope. For a long heartbeat, no one spoke. The wind howled through the open door, pushing against his hesitation. Samuel's heart clenched. He knew what it meant to open his home to them. The town of Silver Creek was not kind to outsiders, least of all natives. If anyone found out, trouble would surely follow. But something in their faces stopped him, a quiet strength, a dignity unbroken by the cold. "Come in," he said finally, stepping aside. The women hesitated, then crossed the threshold. Warmth washed over them as they neared the fire. One gasped softly, reaching her hands toward the heat as if afraid it might disappear. Samuel found two old blankets and wrapped them around their shoulders. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. The younger woman looked barely 20, long tangled hair, sharp dark eyes, her face pale from cold but fierce with life. The other, older and calmer, carried herself with the quiet watchfulness of someone who protected others for too long. When Samuel offered bread and a bowl of stew, they exchanged glances before accepting. The younger spoke first, her English halting but heartfelt. "Thank you." Her name was Naira. The elder was Tala. They told him, in fragments and silence, of soldiers who had burned their camp, forcing them to flee into the mountains. They had walked for days without food or shelter. Samuel listened quietly, his chest tightening. He'd seen cruelty before, men who called themselves righteous while burning what they didn't understand. The storm outside grew stronger, but inside the cabin, something gentler took root. The three of them sat by the hearth, their faces touched by the dancing firelight. Naira's eyes softened as warmth returned to her hands. Tala's shoulders eased for the first time in days. Samuel watched them, feeling something shift deep within him, the silence in his chest no longer so heavy. "You can stay the night," he said. "The storm won't ease till morning." Naira nodded cautiously. "We go tomorrow." Samuel smiled faintly. "We'll see." That night, he lay awake listening to the wind, the crackling fire, and the soft rhythm of their breathing. The loneliness that had wrapped itself around him for years began to loosen its grip. He thought of Clara, her laughter, her voice, and felt, for the first time since she'd gone, that life was stirring again. The snow melted slowly into spring. What had once been a lonely patch of land began to bloom again, not just with flowers, but with laughter and motion. Naira and Tala stayed longer than they'd promised. Their presence wove itself into Samuel's life like thread through cloth. They worked beside him from dawn till dusk, learning the rhythm of the land, planting, mending fences, caring for animals. The old cabin, once a monument to grief, became a living thing again. Samuel, who had once spoken only to himself, now talked, about seeds and seasons, about the stories Clara used to tell. The women listened, and sometimes, Naira would hum softly as she worked, melodies older than words, filled with the heartbeat of her people. Her songs made the wind sound less lonely. Tala, quiet and steady, had a gift with animals. Horses that once shied from touch now leaned into her hands. Samuel often found himself watching her work, wondering what kind of life she had left behind, and what it had cost her to survive. Sometimes, in the quiet of evening, he'd find Naira sitting near the fire, her hair catching the glow of the flames. Her laughter, soft, sudden, reminded him of things he thought were gone forever. But peace on the frontier never lasted long. When Samuel rode into Silver Creek one afternoon for supplies, the air felt different. Conversation stopped as he entered the store. Men who once greeted him now stared with cold, suspicious eyes. "You've got company up there," one man muttered. "Two Apache women, isn't it?" Samuel said nothing. Another spat into the dust. "You'll bring trouble to all of us if you don't send them off." Samuel paid for his supplies and left without a word. But on the ride home, the weight of those words followed him like storm clouds. He'd known fear before, of loss, of silence, but this was different. This was the kind of fear that turned men cruel. When his cabin came into view, smoke curling gently from the chimney, his heart steadied. He saw the women mending a fence in the evening sun, their laughter rising above the rustle of grass. In that moment, the rest of the world seemed far away. He walked up, handed them water, and said quietly, "You're part of this place now." Naira's eyes widened, then she smiled, shy but radiant. It was the kind of smile that could melt even the hardest winter. The days grew long and golden. The farm flourished. Samuel taught Naira to ride, her laughter echoing across the plains as she tried to balance on his old mare. Tala teased them both, her rare smiles lighting the dullest days. Samuel found himself waking each morning not to emptiness, but to purpose. He rebuilt fences, added a new shed, planted more crops than ever before. The rhythm of work became music again. One evening, as Naira hummed by the fire, Samuel picked up his old fiddle, untouched since Clara's death. The melody that came out was rough at first, but then smooth, alive. When he finished, Naira said softly, "You play from heart." He nodded. "That's the only way worth playing." For a moment, their eyes met in silence, not romantic yet, but full of understanding. Two souls, both healed by the same fire. But peace, once again, was fragile. One morning, Samuel found a letter nailed to his gate, unsigned, but clear in its message, "Send them away." That night, someone painted a crude mark on his fence, a warning. Samuel burned the letter and mended the fence at sunrise. When Naira saw it, she asked quietly, "They hate us?" He hesitated. "They don't understand you," he said finally. "And people fear what they don't understand." "You not fear?" she asked. He met her gaze. "Not anymore." Something passed between them then, a quiet promise stronger than words. By the time summer deepened, the three of them had built something no one could take away. Laughter filled the cabin. Work felt lighter. The world, though still harsh beyond their land, seemed softer within its borders. One evening, as the sky burned red with sunset, Samuel stood beside Naira and Tala watching the wind ripple through the fields. He said, "This land was built on kindness. And kindness stays." Naira's eyes filled with tears. Tala reached out, laying her hand over his. "Then kindness will grow here," she said softly. They stood together as the sun sank low, the wind carrying away every trace of fear. That night, Samuel sat on the porch under the wide New Mexico sky. The stars shimmered above like lanterns from another world. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He thought about Clara, about how love had once left and somehow found its way back, disguised as two strangers knocking at his door. He realized then that love wasn't always loud or sudden. Sometimes it arrived quietly, in gratitude, in laughter, in the warmth of shared silence. It didn't erase the past, but it softened it, healed it, and made it whole again. When autumn came, the farm was unrecognizable, alive, full, and steady. So was Samuel. He no longer thought of Naira and Tala as guests. They were family now, part of the land, part of his heart. Travelers passing through sometimes saw them, a farmer and two women working side by side, their laughter carried on the wind. Some whispered. Others stared. But Samuel no longer cared. In that vast stretch of New Mexico earth, beneath the open sky and endless wind, Samuel Reed had found what he'd lost long ago, not just love, but belonging. A home. A purpose. And a heart that finally remembered how to live again.